Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today we welcome my good friend Kyle Hunt. We met back in 2020. I didn't know this backstory, so when he got to share it with me on the podcast, I was surprised. He went from a marketing degree to lead generation agency to e-commerce owner to a partner in weekend investments, using M&A to acquire interest in their clients that they service. Again, another powerful way that agency M&A goes beyond just buying competition and buying out revenue. It's a wealth of insights and knowledge. So make sure to stay to the end where he talks about what he's doing next in helping agencies who have operational challenges to grow. So, Kyle, let's dive in. Thank you for joining me, Kyle.
Peter, thank you for having me, my man. It's been too long.
Okay. You are in the agency world, but you weren't always in it, and yet you were. So share more about how you got into agency world, the lead gen agency, how that took us into your e-commerce, and now you're back in the agency, and in between all this M&A and transaction experience you've been gifted with.
Yeah, we're recovering shiny object syndrome person here for sure. So my first experience in the agency space was back in like 2013, 2014. And I started a lead generation company, and I didn't know anything about leads. I went to school for marketing. I didn't know anything about digital marketing. This was like 5 years after I graduated, but I did want to start a business and I did want to make a lot of money, and knew some people who were in the industry, and they like, you should start a lead gen company. So I learned how to create Google ads from YouTube. I learned how to create landing pages from YouTube, learned how to create everything from scratch, and then built that company. We ended up building out like a sales division of it because we found that qualified leads were worth more than unqualified leads that hadn't talked to an individual. So we built out a sales qualification center there, had up like 25 people at our peak. And then I exited that to my business partner because owning a call center is not fun. It's not.
Just so we can spend a little bit of time on it, how different was your marketing business degree and actually running a small business and agency?
Not relevant. Like, not relevant at all. And I actually went to UCF, University of Central Florida. They have a pretty good marketing program, but a lot of it was like Harvard case studies and reviewing that and understanding marketing strategy and all that is probably nice if you go into corporate marketing and advertising, but not marketing to small business owners and having to build landing pages and understand Google Ads, which digital marketing wasn't even really a thing they taught in college at the time.
Did you start the agency with a business partner, or is that someone who came on later?
I did start with a business partner, yes. So I was lucky there.
Did you find that easier? Because a lot of agency owners either go independent or they partner with somebody to kind of yin and yang it.
Yeah, definitely easier. And I've scaled businesses with me only. I've scaled businesses with a business partner. Always easier if you have a very competent business partner that you can trust, for sure. And that's not always the case that you get both of those things. You might have a business partner that also might not be competent or that you trust. But having both of those is really important. And I mean, it takes 50% of the workload off of you if you can do it right. So super helpful.
Now, what happens to many founders who are in a business, especially young in their professional career, you get to a time when it's ready to maybe move on. So you end up selling the agency or your portion of the agency to your business partner. So would that be like the first experience of a transaction that you were exposed to?
100%. It definitely was the first negotiation for an exit that I ever had. And I was like 26 years old, I think, at the time. Maybe a little, right around 26. That was an interesting experience for sure.
What can you share from that? Because this is a lot of businesses find themselves with a business partner. One wants to leave. It can be complicated to come to some agreeable value for the current business. If you're material to the ongoing, there's this push and pull. What can you share about that experience that someone who's in a similar position could learn from? And then like, what were your key takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think that to have a good end, it helps to have a good beginning. So like if you actually have a good relationship with your business partner and you kind of look out for each other, that the exit can be very good for both of you. It can be very like a happy thing as opposed to a sad thing. And I think like that's the first step, is making sure that you have someone that you can, like someone that you get along with and you trust. Cause I was friends with the guy for a long time prior to being the business partner. And there actually wasn't a hard negotiation. I'm like, I want out. I don't love this anymore. We have a call center. That's not what I signed up for. Like doing Google ads and doing landing pages. Like that's what I enjoy doing, not running a call center. I'd say that's my biggest takeaway. Just like make sure that you get into bed with good people who you have a relationship with already. And it just makes the exit easy because both of you are kind of looking out for each other.
And so it's not adversarial. It's not where you're trying to take something from the business that it needs.
Yeah.
What motivated you to get into e-commerce?
So I sold that company and then was supposed to be like 1 month off. I just want to go collect my thoughts, figure out what I want to do next. And that turned into 2 months, and that turned into 6 months, and that turned into 2 years. So I took 2 years off after that. And I look back on it and I'm like, I could never do that ever again, because you lose a lot of your sense of like purpose and desire and what you want to accomplish in the world. And I kind of look back on it as 2 years that I did have a lot of fun, and I blew all the money in 2 years. But if I was who I am now, I would have gone back and been like, after a month, like find something else to do. So I ran out of money and had to find a business to get into. So I tried a bunch of different types of businesses, and e-commerce is kind of where I landed. Glad that I did, because I've had a lot of success in e-commerce.
Well, let's not just easily skirt over this two-year sabbatical. And
Man,
I mean, David Cassidy, his dying words were so much wasted time. So going back, you did this transaction. What would you say to yourself? What would you jump into? What would you pay attention to?
well, if I had the knowledge that I have now, I would have said go into e-commerce. Just don't take 2 years. Take a month. That would be good for myself. I mean, alternatively, I could have gone back. Regardless of what I went into, I just shouldn't have waited that long. Like, I could have started another agency that didn't have to be a lead gen agency. I think agencies are great business models. I think e-commerce is a great business. They're all great businesses and have, their own things that are positive and negative. But to me, the big point of it was just like, don't wait that long. Just after a month, find something, commit to it, and just do it.
So if you're a business partner and you want to leave your current partnership with the person you founded the company with, and you structure in a way that kind of enables you not to have to work for a period of time, you're saying don't just sit on your hands and rest on your laurels, jump back into it.
Yeah, when you say it that way.
And get to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, e-commerce. So you finally awoke from your time of limbo. We'll call it fun limbo. You weren't just sitting around. You were having a good time. Explain the venture you went into, because this is a nice lead into what became some other M&A stuff that you were exposed to.
So I had a few ventures, and most of them they weren't successful, so I'm not going to get into them. But the one that I did happen to land on is an e-commerce brand called Family Gifts Co. that I founded, and it was definitely an experience growing this thing, and it was a COVID baby. I started it in 2018, 2019. And we had a very successful first year for what I consider for an e-commerce business. In our first 3 months, we did $500,000 in revenue from scratch, from nothing. And then, in 2020, we did over 27 million in revenue. And that was, market forces for sure. Like, COVID definitely helped us and made a huge bump for the business. Even prior to COVID, we were still on track for $1 million months. So I'd never owned a business that had grown that fast. And that was pretty crazy, and definitely, we'll have to talk about it. So yeah, we scaled that to 27 million. We scaled it so much that we pretty much broke our fulfillment, our back end as well. And we had multiple fulfillment providers all around the US, and we sold canvases, like what you'd hang on your wall. And if you think back to like peak COVID and Mother's Day of 2020, Walmart was closed, Target was closed, everywhere was closed. And we happened to sell something that you could get delivered to your door without going out. And then everybody was bored and they're looking at their walls and they're like, why don't we have stuff on our walls? And I'm like, I saw something you can put on your walls. So I think there's a lot of market timing that went into the success of that. And then once I found it, it's like you just double down and you feed your horses, you feed your stallions. So yeah, I think that's another big, yeah.
It was March of 2020 where the first time e-commerce had more volume than in-store.
Yeah.
And right time, right place, for sure.
Right time, right place, for sure. And I don't think that business I know it's not replicable in the same format today, because there's just so many people looking for that type of gift. And it was a newer type of product, the version of canvas that I was selling. So I think you find those like once in a lifetime opportunities, and you just pour all the money you have into them to make them go faster and make more money.
Yeah, you go all in.
That's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you're saying is right time, right place, and going all in on it. You also had the opportunity to work with partners, agencies, people who helped you build and support that scale, which kind of led to the relationship that led to the next chapter after eCom. So run us through that.
Yeah. So during this scale, I had a really great agency that I was working with called AdKings. And I was also talking to another agency, this one called Weekend Digital. They were local. AdKings was in Europe. And AdKings did a phenomenal job scaling. And like Gisco, there was like a whole Facebook study about it. Uh, but I was trying to look on how do I move this like local, or how do I work with people that are a little bit closer to me. The other reason that I was looking at Weekend is I had shiny object syndrome. Like I have this thing that I just scaled to multiple figures. I'm like, why don't I go acquire other e-commerce agencies or other e-commerce businesses?
Yes.
And I was looking specifically to acquire other gift businesses and do like a gift business roll up. I was trying to figure out lead gen for that. So like, how do I find out who has my customers, my potential customers or acquisitions, and how do I have that in how do I get that on my calendar every single day? And I was like, well, agencies definitely do that. They talk to D2C brands every single day. So I started talking to Weekend. They had a lot of lead flow that I was like, I think that type of lead flow is the type of lead flow that I want. We should do something together. So while I had this giant business e-commerce business, we struck a deal with Weekend to create Weekend Investments, and that became our investment portfolio of e-commerce brands. So I spent a lot of time working with Tom, who's the founder, Brandon, who was the CMO at the time, and a business partner on creating like, how do we create a portfolio for D2C brands as opposed to me only working on my brand and them only working on an agency. And they were bored of the agency at that time, even though they were only like 3 or 4 years into it. And, right. And
Tom was, yeah, he was
yeah,
moving quick. You think you had shiny object syndrome?
yeah. Tom also shiny object, both recovering shiny objects and people. But yeah, we created Weekend Investments from that and leveraged the resources of Weekend for lead gen, since they were doing a lot of paid ads. That's how I talked to a lot of the first people for potential acquisition. And then I also worked with Uhuru at the time to do lead gen for me, to talk to gift-based companies. It was actually after working with you and Uhuru that I realized that I don't want to acquire gift companies because they're all horrible. Most of them were like food companies, and food companies have horrible gross margins. Startup costs are much higher than traditional startups, and the failure rate is much higher as well. With food, like 50% of people are going to like it and 50% of people are going to hate it, no matter how good you are. Not a business that I wanted to acquire, but I did talk to about 40 of those businesses before coming to the conclusion that this is not something that I want.
Yeah, I think the overlap was we met in 2020. We had just done a joint venture for deal sourcing because that's how I grew my pipeline for acquisition targets. And I was approached by Roland and Deanna, who run a program called Epic. And they said, hey, the number one problem that people who are learning about M&A have is sourcing deals. And you're talking to, at the time, 2020, all I did was grow my beard and sit in front of Zoom. That was it.
And close deals.
and did an aggressive amount of deal volume. But it was hot in Austin. I couldn't travel. And so air conditioned and Zoom. So how I spent my day. And then we were offering that service, or the team that we had was starting to offer that service more broadly. And it was really interesting to see how people responded to it, just like you did, which is you have a deal thesis, and it isn't until you start really having conversations with sellers and examining the businesses that you go, maybe that's not my acquisition criteria.
Yeah, for sure.
And you make a good informed pivot. And then I recall Tom, he too was in the acquisitive direction. He was like, how can I grow Weekend in this way? Buying brands, buying other agencies. And so I think like 2020 was the epiphany of a lot of people.
It was for sure. I think there was a lot of content put out there and a lot of ad spend put out there for those types of like programs to go acquire other businesses because it's COVID and everyone's at home anyway. Why don't you do this?
Well, touch on that briefly, which is you went from kind of a consumer, because you two were learning, you were understanding, to then extreme doer. And most of the people who take online education who don't have a background in investment banking or corporate finance learn like many do, which is reading a book, going through a course, listening to resources, and then going out and trying to do it. But 90+% just consume the dang content, Kyle, and don't take action. So why are you so different, man? Why is it that you were able to learn it and then go do it so quickly?
Well, to be fair, I did both. Like I did consume a lot, and then I go out and try the things, and then I mess up because you're new at something, so you obviously suck. And then I go back to the material, And I was probably listening to like 2 hours a day of M&A stuff, but also having 6 to 8 hours a day of calls throughout the funnel, whether it's a first call or a discovery call or a call to potentially even close someone. So I think the important thing is that, well, for me as the owner of a large company, I was able to actually delegate a lot of my time to my team, which was a good thing at the time. As I look back on it, I definitely should have had more insights on what the team was up to and better metrics to track the team. That's a whole other story.
Well, that's worth unpacking because this is a resource for buyers.
Okay.
This is a real thing. I've heard you amplify this message publicly, and especially when I joined you on a one-on-one with your community.
Yeah.
And it was have your house in order before you do M&A, because it is seductive. M&A is seductive, and it can have a significant impact on the business. It can transform it. That said, it can pull you out of your current business. So walk us through that in an appropriate way.
What kind of appropriate way?
The level of sharing that you're comfortable doing.
Okay. Family Gifts Co. I had a whole management team underneath me. So I was able to delegate a lot of my work to them and go do full-time talking to companies for M&A.
Yeah, 80-90% of your time was dedicated to it.
A lot. Like most of my calendar was, if you looked at it, just booked with calls. The challenge is this was the first company that had ever grown to that size. So I didn't really even know what operations was or how to track things of that nature. So in an e-commerce business, what's important is delivering things to clients on time for delivery, customer service response times, first call answer times, like how soon after a ring do you get those answers, ticket resolution time, things of that nature, like from operations perspective. I wasn't really tracking much of those things, even as large as we were. I was tracking a lot of the shiny metrics that are important, that like seem important to track, but like revenue or profit or my profit was very lagging because we got like 30-day late accounting or MER. I was looking at all the ad metrics that I thought were important, but the things that were actually really important to the business were the ops metrics. Those things, I tried to take on mentors to give me additional guidance on that. I never got the guidance that I know now on that, which like those are the things that you should be focusing on in the business to understand if it's doing well or not, like the things that are client related and client value related. So I just didn't know any of that I know now. And I look back on it and like, those are the things that I should have been tracking because we haven't gotten to what happened in 2021.
No, we can easily bridge that from where we're headed.
Yeah. So 2020, we did 27 million in revenue. And then 2021 came and Christmas of 2020, we had 4 vendors that were shipping our product all around the US. And one of them lost like shipping containers full, our largest vendor, lost shipping containers full of canvas on the way to delivery. So this was like 10 or 20,000 orders. There's a lot of orders and millions of dollars worth of inventory. And we found out like December 6th that it wasn't going to get to people. This is the busiest time ever in the history of e-commerce. It's December 2020, and there's no other additional suppliers that have additional capacity to take on these orders. So we basically didn't deliver a lot of that inventory until the end of January, beginning of February. So we had 30 days of refunds and chargebacks. We had 5,000 customer service tickets at one point per day. So I hired like half the Philippines to answer our email responses. Like it was a crazy time. And I'm like, I don't care how much it costs me. We have to respond to these things and we have to ship these things out as fast as possible. So because of that, we got a lot of negative publicity online, specifically on our ads. And Facebook ads was how we scaled in 2020. So we had like 3 months where everybody is commenting on our ads like, oh, this is a scam. Like, you shouldn't go with this company. Like, hey, you're going to get your canvas, I promise. We had a bunch of issues. And then we had like one of the warehouses had a fire, so they lost even more canvases. Like it was one issue after the other. We shut off ads for all of Q1, and that like almost killed the business. Luckily, ads turned on in Q2, and they started to work decent. But we went from 27 million to right over 5 million. I think we did like 5.2 or 5.3 million in 2021. So that was a huge, huge drop, and a very uncomfortable situation to be in.
Yeah, I remember talking to you in December. What do you think you learned from that? Hindsight 2020, not what you could have changed, but like what were some of the things that you got better from?
Yeah. So it's interesting because as I progress in my knowledge, I look back on the situation and I have a different thought on that. So initially I was like, man, what I should have had is an analyst whose job is to look at these things and then alert me if it goes wrong. And I should have had better qualified people running different parts of the organization. And like all that's true, but ultimately this comes down to me. And it's like the root cause is I had a 30 million almost dollar a year business. I should not have been doing anything else except trying to grow that one thing. Like that's what I look back on. And it's like, I should have just focused on the thing that was scaling and super profitable and making a lot of money. And like only done that thing, which is, very difficult to do because every time you grow a business large, there's always something else there. It could be larger that you could be investing your time and energy in. And for me, M&A was that thing at the time. It was the shiny object that took me away from the main business that I could have scaled. So I think that's what I look at back on it now. It's like, if you have something that's working and it's working really well, like that's all you focus 100% of your attention on. Do not like put your blinders on, only focus on that thing because you don't come across things like that every single day.
How did you evolve? Because obviously it's a lot of weight, there's a lot of disappointment, negativity. You're still a relatively young entrepreneur. It's probably the most people angry at you at one time, hopefully ever, that you get.
We had death threats from people not getting their $80, $100 canvas. It was scary.
Do you feel like that's helped you in some capacity build some thicker skin towards the disruptions of business, compartmentalize? Like what were some of the things that you as a person can take
Yeah.
away?
Yeah. The amount of stress that I went through in those 3 months was like intense. And like, I hope I never have to go through that again. But once you experience something like that, everything else doesn't seem as bad. Like that's the only way I can put it is like, I'll give you an example. So at Weekend, which is the company that we're going to be talking about, like Weekend Investments, a few months into it, we had a very large group of people quit. We had an office in the Philippines and like our media buying team quit, which was a lot of people, and it was the entire team. And they gave us like 2 weeks notice. I remember our head of operations was on a call, like she's crying and she's like, there's no way we're ever going to be able to survive this. I'm like, this is fine. I'm like, we'll just hire more people. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, we'll survive. And we have people on the call who are crying. I'm like, guys, like, let's create a plan. We just have to hire people. It's not the end of the world. We'll survive. But prior, me probably would have also been crying on the call. But when you experience something as bad as that and as difficult as that, and as challenging as that, you don't view challenges the same.
Yeah, it prepares you.
For sure.
This new version of you is transitioning from a downsized e-commerce business now into Weekend Investments. Explain that transition so we can follow you to it. And then what was that first deal that kind of proved this MVP that you can go out and build Weekend Investments?
Okay. So those are two questions. I'll try to get to them. So the transition was very rapid because Family Gifts Co. is deteriorating. Like the huge revenue drop made it very, very unprofitable. So I'm like, I cannot focus all my time and energy on something that's not going to make me a lot of money. So I shifted 75% of my time to Weekend Digital and Weekend Investments. So the agency itself, and then also Weekend Investments, which was the portfolio for brands. So the transition happened very fast, and I immediately made the decision. It's like, hey, where am I going to get the largest return on investment of my time? And it's definitely this thing, and not Family Gifts Co. that should be bankrupt, but like right now it's not. Luckily came through that, but the transition was fast. And I think that's how I generally look at things. It's like you look at what's going to get you the best outcome. And then if that's the thing, like you make a very quick decision to then focus on something else.
So you jumped into Weekend Digital and Weekend Investments just to make sure we cover it. What was Weekend Digital specifically as a type of agency?
So it was a D2C agency. So full service D2C, sold paid media, Google, email, creative. And it's funny because now in like my operations community, I'm like, I don't think that you should do a full service agency unless you have a very specific strategic reason to do that. And for us, the strategic reason to do that was if we're going to invest in brands, we should be full service so we can fully service the brands that we invest in. So I think that's a good thesis. I think that's probably the only reason you should ever start a full service agency though, because the operational complexity required to be good at all those things and to have the teams collaborate effectively is incredible and probably 100 times more difficult than a single service agency. So that's what Weekend was. It was a full service agency that was just scaling pretty fast.
And Tom, who I've had the privilege of mentoring a little bit, he had this ambition of acquiring his clients.
Yeah.
And then you helped him execute that. So how did you do that? And what was that first deal? And take us side by side.
Well,
What'd you do?
first, I have to give you credit for that because you actually gave me the question to ask Tom in my conversations with him was like, Tom, when was the last time that you acquired one of your clients? And that started the conversation for weekend investments. So I have you to thank for that idea to be implanted in his head.
You're
Uh,
welcome. It was also true because he hadn't executed it
yeah,
and he
no,
wanted to, and then he
yeah,
needed someone to help him get it done.
yeah. So, at the time I basically pivoted all my time and energy into, to sourcing deals for weekend. And I used a lot of the material that you gave me as well through your course. I think it's
Name
digital agency.
masterclass.
Yeah, M&A masterclass. And I just changed it to e-commerce. So like a lot of the scripts that you gave out and a lot of the lead gen SOPs and everything, and even the integration stuff, I just changed it to e-commerce.
Yeah,
So
the
thank you for
analogy,
that.
it's the same system. It just needs the analogy of the industry and someone
Yeah,
who can run it. Information's helpful, but at the end of the day, you need someone who's going to execute on it and tailor it to the business,
yeah.
which you came in and executed at scale. So you sourced deals. You were talking on behalf of Weekend Investments. What was the first real viable deal you said yes to?
Yeah. So the first deal that we closed was this company called Dylan, and they're a water bottle company, and they have a patented alkaline thing that goes inside water bottles. So it's not just a regular water bottle like you would like this, like a hydro jug. It's actually more like a supplement. And he didn't sell it that way. He sold it like a hydro jug. And I was like, dude, you need to be selling this like a supplement, not like a water bottle. You shouldn't be competing against Yeti. You should be competing against like alkaline supplements. So interesting part of that deal was he had a VC who invested in the deal as well. So we had to, through the sales process, not only convince him that we were going to be the right partner for him, but also the VC that invested millions of dollars into his brand. So luckily, Tom was able to do that because Tom is an excellent communicator and salesperson. The deal happened actually pretty quickly, so we were really lucky for that.
So agency can often have different descriptions and definitions put on it. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, it's a business that goes out and transacts as a way to grow. And instead of just buying another competitor or buying another agency, you use the perspective of we are growing our clients, but we don't own a piece of these businesses. What if we owned them or owned a piece of it? And then we had participation, which is a dream of a lot of agencies. So you got the first one. What did that pitch? What did that offer look like? If you're like I'm an agency owner and I want to apply a very similar strategy, I want to go out and do a deal with my clients. What's that look like? I know it's changed over time, but what did that first one look
It has changed. It has changed over time. I like the new model much better.
like? Let's
But I
just throw
think
out the
it,
old model.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. So I think at that time, the deal that we negotiated it was equity plus monthly payment. So we had some sort of monthly payment that was like double digit thousands. And then we had a minority equity percentage as well. And that's typically how we do deals, even still today, as minority equity, which in retrospect, I'd much prefer majority equity, but especially for your first deals, it'll probably be, if you have this model, minority equity, because you don't really want to run an e-commerce brand.
Help us understand the mechanism for that. So there's profit share, there's taking an actual
Mm-hmm.
equity position, there's
Yeah.
non-dividend classes of shares. What works?
So e-commerce brands, most of them are not as profitable as you would think. And most of the profit actually gets reinvested back into the e-commerce brand for inventory. So if you're looking at e-commerce brands, the profit share really isn't going to be that much. Like it might be some, but not that much. So what we prefer to do is take a fee as the agency on record for retainer, a highly discounted fee, and then take equity. And the equity for us was only going to be valuable at sale. So we were taking discounted fees today in the hope that in 3 to 5 years, we're going to sell this thing for a lot of money. What we do today is still some version of that, but the structure of the deal is just a little bit different. And I think it's a little bit better too.
Got it. And so, from my experience in the way that I've structured it, there's a warrant on a business, so penny
Yeah.
warrants. You can buy in
Yeah.
the future. So there's no gain that you have taxation on and treatment on in the current years before sale. That's a good, efficient way of doing it. And then, depending on the level of intervention and influence you as an agency have on a brand that can grow, you can do a baseline deal where it's a percentage of revenue above some historical expectation. So they go, oh, here's the accretive benefit I've had with you. So everything that was before that, I'm not taking credit for.
Yeah.
You probably were in the former of that, but if you're able to share, what is the efficient way of participating that you all have learned from in the exit, not in the ongoing side of the business?
We prefer phantom shares and phantom equity for that purpose. It is more taxable at exit. I think you have to look at the type of exit, the type of entity that you're acquiring though. So for us, if we acquired actual equity and it's a fee for service model, so like we're taxed on that day one, it wouldn't make any sense to be full equity owners in that business because the reality of e-commerce is 8 to 10 of those businesses are going to fail, much like if you're a VC investor in SaaS. So it doesn't make any sense to pay today for future value that's probably going to be zero. So the deals we were structuring were all some sort of delayed taxation, typically, preferably through phantom shares, phantom equity, depending upon how the business is structured.
Great. So that you are now an investment arm who's taking positions in your clients, but you are also helping the agency. So you're not just doing that, you also are over on the ops side of Weekend Digital. So you're thrown back into agency life.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain your water hose of operational shifts because you had a lot going on there that's kind of like led to where you are now. So I think that's a nice also way to transition it.
Yeah. Well, I had 3 jobs, right? Because I had family gifts go still, and then I was doing the outbound and for Weekend Investments, and then also it wasn't initially being the COO of Weekend, but eventually my business partner Tom convinced me to be the COO there. So my lead gen company was like 25, 30 people at its largest, and like I think the call center model is much different from a labor perspective. It's usually people are not getting paid that much. Let's just say that, and they're usually first time
Entry level, yeah.
First time people in the market, yeah, entry level people. Now at weekends, when I started, we had like 110 employees. A lot of them were very skilled. A lot of them were very knowledgeable. Some of the people who were in management and director positions are probably some of the most skilled people in the world. So to go from that to e-commerce, where again, most of my team is based internationally, to weekend, that was quite a shock for the type of management that I was used to. Everything that I knew about management and leadership had to change. Like everything. How I looked at metrics, how I looked at organizational structure, how I looked at the capacity of the team members, how I looked at all the different services that we offered. Like it was just a huge beast to untangle. So there was a
There
lot
was
of
an
learning that I had
office
to
and a
do.
studio and like
Multiple
you
offices. Dude,
like
we had 3 offices. We had
yeah,
an
you had
office.
people
Yeah.
coming in, you had just a different culture and energy.
Actually, we had 4 at one time after we did an acquisition of an agency too. So we had a lot of offices and a lot of people.
How are you? You kind of brushed over. You were persuaded, convinced to take this operational COO role, and then you're thrown into it. But how did that persuasion happen?
So when you have our investment business, which the success of the investment business is entirely predicated upon the success of the agency. If there's an issue with the agency, it then becomes an issue for you. So they didn't have a true ops person. And not that I was an ops person or would have considered myself an ops person at the time. I happen to have more operational experience and grown larger companies than anybody else in the agency. So I became the default ops person and COO. And that's basically how that happened. He's like, if this is going to succeed, the agency also must succeed. So you helping the agency is also helping the investment side of things.
True.
Sound logic.
Well, we're hinting at something that's important to highlight. The agency drives the value for the investments, and so now you have this disproportionate energy within the agency. You have the things you own and some clients who are renting your team, which created some shifts in how the agency evolved. Explain that.
For sure. Yeah. So whenever you acquire another business or you become a business partner in that business, it doesn't matter if you own 5% of that business or if you own 50% of that business, you're a business partner for the business. And that means that you have all the problems that business partners have. And you can set all the expectations in the world with that new business partner. But if shit hits the fans, I hope I can curse on this podcast. If the S hits the fan, you're going to get those calls and you're going to be called in to help problem solve because you're an owner of the assets. So let's just like put that out there that's an important lesson that you knew, but you didn't understand how much time would go into this thing. So like the time investment that goes into an asset that you own is substantially higher than an asset that you don't own. But 10x that. And alternatively, like, or even like thinking about it as well, it should be because you own it. So then the thought is, well, why am I taking on regular clients if the potential return on investment of an asset they own is way more than collecting $50,000 a month, $40,000 or whatever that thing is from a client? So the whole agency changed, and this wasn't like an immediate thing, but it's little things where you're like, hey, where should we spend our time here or here? And over time, you start to realize we should 100% be spending most of our time on the things that we own, not the things that we don't own, if that's the model. And that's what happened. So now pretty much every e-commerce brand that Weekend works with is an investment, and hopefully it'll pay off in 3 to 5 to 7 years, whatever that time frame is. But they don't take on clients now unless they're considered for investment. So you pretty much have to burn the agency to the ground if you're considering this model.
Client side version of the agency, because you're still technically
Yeah.
doing agency
Correct.
services, right?
You are.
But you're building more of a back office marketing department that is supporting one of the assets in the portfolio versus taking on clients. How did that structurally shift the culture, if any? Because you go from servicing clients who you can fire, who can fire you, to servicing kind of permanent clients.
Yeah, permanent clients for sure. So we made a rule where it's like, okay, if we're going to invest in something, we need to be in like a regular agency on this thing for 3 to 6 months. Like there needs to be some sort of prior relationship and expectations of what we're going to be doing and roles and responsibilities in real life, how it works, not like on a piece of paper where you write down roles and responsibilities. So I think that was something we learned very early, where it's like, man, because Dylan, we weren't the agency of record on, we didn't do anything for them, and then we were boom doing everything. And not just Dylan, but generally, like we're the marketing arm, we're the strategy, we're advisors, and oftentimes those people don't want to listen to you, even though you've already done what they want to do. You've already accomplished what they want to accomplish. You've already scaled things and sold things and done all the things. So I think that was another lesson for us too, is like, you need to be taking on partners who actually want to be partners and who actually want to listen to your advice and follow through on it, versus a partner who won't listen to you. And I think like the biggest example that we had of this is one of the portfolio companies ran a survey to their customers, because I was like, hey, one of the first things that I attacked was new product development when we onboarded a new portfolio client. Like, let's see what else we can sell these people, because you already have a big list, you already have goodwill. What can we sell them? So you ask, like you send a survey out to your clients and say, what do you want? And give them a bunch of choices, and then like an open question where they can respond with whatever they want. And in one of the situations, the survey was like 70% of people responded. They're like, we want this product. And I was like, this is awesome. This is so clear. This is obviously what we're going to be doing next. And the founder's like, no, like, I don't really trust it. He's like, we've already got this one thing I'm making. I think it's going to be better. I'm like, dude, 70% of your clients, like people who paid you money already told you that they want this other thing. Like, this isn't something that we ignore. And he ignored it. Now I look back, I'm like, we probably should have started that relationship a little bit differently. And I probably would have had that filter. Does this person listen to me? Do they take advice well? Do they take criticism well? And if not, then that's probably not somebody that we want to be a partner with.
Additionally, you also described taking a majority stake versus a minority stake for some of these type of control issues or disagreements. Because one of the first things I hear you say, and this is what I teach, that you do when you buy a business, survey clients, say, what would you like us to offer that we don't currently offer today?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how quickly you can sell something new that drives profit, because you don't have to expand the team most of the time for that. Or raise prices. They go, I haven't raised prices in forever. You raise 5% and have no operational changes. You add 5% to the bottom line. And these things are very material when you first take control. So it sounds like you were doing due diligence via the agency to kind of vet your future investment partner and be confident in your ability to scale it. And by the way, that is what agencies have as an advantage. Agencies that are well entrenched into like the marketing strategy, the financial metrics of a business, you're actually doing due diligence. I don't talk about this too much, but I started my agency from corporate finance background, and I had another CFO. So what kind of egos did we have? Starting an agency, no experience, a CEO and a CFO. What the hell are we doing? And one of our kind of early considerations was, hey, we want to do M&A. But what's the easiest way for us to understand more businesses? We're looking at stocks to invest in. And Warren Buffett 101, which is invest in good businesses, know how to value them and know how to buy them for under that value. And so part of the angle of a marketing agency is you have insights into the business and how it's performing. And if it's underperforming because of marketing or sales or demand, and that gets fixed, man, you can unlock significant value. Or they're failing at that, and it's actually a terrible product market fit, and you shouldn't invest in that business. So you guys are executing a secret weapon when it comes to due diligence, which is try to market the business before you take a stake in it.
Yeah, 100%. And it helps with the financial due diligence because we get P&Ls and we get all the financials
You took my
every single month. We get
pre-DD
everything.
list
Yeah.
and made that your client onboarding list.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember when I heard back, I was like, well, you're collecting what data from your clients? That's the preliminary due diligence list.
Yeah, yeah. And then we get to determine if they work well with us, which is an important thing. And then we get to determine if we can actually scale their business or not. And oftentimes you're like, we can definitely do this, and then there's some reason that you can't. There's some sort of limitation. So it's much better to find that out when they're paying you than when you're an owner.
Yeah, saying yes to a long-term commitment and then you're trial and erroring it with them is not a good way to have a first impression or make good progress. Anything in the investment category that you're extremely proud of, or a deal that was memorable beyond the first one that is exciting to share?
Let me leave you with a thought. And I think when I first started to do investments with brands, I was like, 10 to 10 of these things are going to work. I was like, we know what we're doing with e-commerce. Like we can scale these businesses like we can scale anything. And what I learned to be true over the next 3 years is that's not true. And when you're investing in e-commerce brands, it's more like venture capital than it's investing in agency. If you invest in an asset class like an agency, you're probably going to win more times than you're going to lose because agencies are relatively stable businesses. They have really understood structures and cost structures that people should be able to follow. And the business model is really simple. E-commerce is not that, especially D2C e-commerce where you're reliant on Meta and Google or SEO, and any single platform change can royally screw up the entire business, if not bankrupt it. So I think the biggest learning from that was I thought everything was going to work out, and it turns out it's more like VCs where we've invested in over a dozen brands, and there's probably going to be one or two right now that is all the alpha and makes all the money for the entire portfolio at exit. That is by far my biggest learning of this.
Which is a valuable lesson. You hinted at an acquisition of another agency under Weekend Digital. While you're looking at the brands, were you also involved in that due diligence and onboarding those projects?
So that was before my time. The acquisition happened a few months prior to me onboarding. However, I did deal with the fallout from that acquisition. And we acquired another creative studio because we had a creative studio, but we didn't think that the processes were that great. And we thought the processes were really good. And then also there was a very charismatic leader of the agency as well that really wanted on their sales team. And that did not go very well. In honesty, the sales leader underperformed and so did the team. So essentially we took on an entire new team without much new sales coming in from that sales leader and had to foot that entire cost while we had that team. So that was an example of what not to do. And I think it was done with very little due diligence on both sides and just a desire to want to work together and do something great. And that's obviously not enough. And there's a reason you teach the due diligence that you do and looking through financials with a fine-tooth comb and understanding teams and interviewing people and looking at SOPs and all of those things. There wasn't really any of that in that first acquisition. So that was the first and last agency acquisition Weekend did while I was there. Not to say there won't be any in the future, but I think we learned that investing in an e-commerce asset would probably be a better use of our resources and time.
Yeah, you also definitely had more infrastructure support brands than to deal with the human capacity of integration. You touched on something I heard you say. The deal came rather easy from enthusiastic ownership. And when it seems, oh, this is a good fit, kind of due diligence can be a little meek. No one's trying to kill the deal that aggressively. But the aggressive, detailed due diligence is where it's at.
Yeah, like if Tom had the due diligence sheet that you gave to everybody, And that deal probably would not have happened. In retrospect, everything is a learning lesson. Now we know what not to do.
Well, I mean that's how you progress, and your
Yeah,
story is bold, courageous tenacity, going after it, dealing with what happens, learning from it, and having a step level change of your life. And that's inspiring. That's motivating.
thank you.
How did it now get into this operations format that you're in today? So let's kind of get everyone up to date to what 2025 looks like for Kyle Hunt.
Hmm.
You got this portfolio. You've pressure tested through battles, through trial and error, all these things to kind of build this perspective about what is good and what is bad in operating businesses. Use that as kind of your prelude.
Yeah. So when you're a minority equity holder, things are different. Whether that's a minority equity holder of a e-commerce asset or whether that's a minority equity holder of a portfolio or an agency. And I was a minority equity holder in all of those. So for me, it was a lot of work and it was a lot of time and ultimately building somebody else's vision and somebody else's dream. And it just became less fun. And I'm having a baby girl in July, and a lot of my perspective shifted on what's important in life, and working crazy hours like that and not having fun was one of the things I was just like, I'm not going to settle for this anymore. So I started an agency operations mastermind because agency operations, it sounds boring as hell, and it is to most people, but it's actually what gives me joy. And it's actually what I really am excited about. And I work with 40 agency owners every single week who are incredibly talented and incredibly sharp and some of the best people in the world at what they do. And I help them solve their problems. And I get a lot of personal enjoyment from that. And I own 100% of it. And, it's not a highly exitable company as a community right now. That doesn't mean in the future that it can't be, but I do own 100% of it. I make my own schedule. I do whatever I want. When the baby comes, I can take 3 months off and like the house isn't going to burn down. Whereas that would have been impossible, literally impossible, working at the portfolio or the agency.
For the person who is working uh, as a minority partner in an agency or in a business who wants to go off on their own, maybe they don't have their first baby girl showing up as a good reason to do it. What do you have as a message for them about stepping out and taking that risk?
So, I mean, I guess that I'm kind of lucky in that I've done a lot of things. So I have a lot of skills. Stepping out and doing this for me, I knew there's a high chance of success because it's something that I love to do. And I also am good at it. And I know how to do sales and lead gen and all of those things. So I feel like for me, the risk seemed a lot less. The risk seemed like it would be much higher if I stayed there and then I had a kid and then wouldn't ever be able to see that kid. That to me was the highest potential risk. But I would say, and I guess this goes back to my original point too about business partners. It's like I still have a good relationship with my business partners at weekends. I still own equity in weekend. I didn't even have to get bought out. I'm like, I'm cool rolling my equity. I think that's fine to make a lot of money later down the road and do what I want. So, having a good business partner, back to like my first kind of, what I was saying at the beginning of this is like that's one of the most important things is like getting into bed into business with people that you like and you trust and you've been friends with and you think are good people and are going to treat you with respect. You can do it. You can stop what you're doing. You can make life changing decisions very quickly, and you can move very fast in those life changing decisions and be very confident in them if you think you have the skill set to do it.
That's great. Kyle, when people reach out to you after this is published, you'll be a dad, hopefully
Hello.
on maternity leave.
Yeah.
But what's the best way for someone to reach out to you to learn more about the agency operations community and the mastermind that you built,
Yeah.
and potentially Weekend Digital, or just, man, your story resonated and they want to say hi and get to know you?
So the best place to find me is LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. Just look for Kyle A. Hunt. You can also go to the agency operators website at agencyoperators.io. You can go to weekenddigital.com to learn more about weekends or weekendinvestments.com. And I will talk to you soon.
Kyle, welcome to dad life, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate
I
you.
appreciate it, Peter. Looking forward to joining you.